What I'm going to do today is I'm going to read from a few essays from this book, and I'm going to reference a little of the music on the CD, and then I would like you guys to, it's a coffee table book, so it's not very long. I would like you guys to finish the remaining essays, and then complete your blog dedicated to today's session about your thoughts on the essays and the discussion today from the book. Okay? So,
Irvin, are we going to ask you questions?
yes,
Okay, cool.
if you want to. If not, I will get a class really quickly. So I'm going to read from a few. Just a little bit about the book. Rarely would somebody at this point, the point that I'm at in my career, do a book. Typically, a book is something that's a memoir or a reflection on a lifetime of works, and unless somebody knows something that I know, hopefully I'm not done with my lifetime here. But it was kind of necessary because I do a lot of different things, and what I kept finding was a lot of, for lack of a better term, marketplace confusion about what I do. So this book is kind of a portfolio of my work up until right about right now. Of course, I've created a few pieces outside of this book, some things for symphony orchestra and some other things like that. I'm working on some other projects. But this book is a pretty good snapshot of my career up until really I turned about 30. So it's a good assessment of a beginning part of somebody's career. Being a coffee table book, it's a book that I hope was designed so people could go back to it over and over again, and it was purposely put together so it wouldn't be too many words. It was put together so that you could grasp the concepts quickly and not be too overwhelming. Kind of basically a starting point to somebody's work. And I had a couple of examples of books when I was designing this book that I liked. I thought Quincy Jones had a really good one. I saw him that was kind of like a scrap table book. Preservation Hall put out one. And Louis Armstrong had a similar kind of one. Obviously, Quincy Jones and even Preservation Hall, you're talking about, once again, lifetime work. So their coffee tables were a lot larger. The other piece of this is something that I wanted to be a little easier for us to travel with. So I didn't want to make like a large coffee table and try to bring like 500 of these things somewhere. So that's why it's also a little bit thinner. The cover of the book is actually by a world-renowned photographer, a guy named Herman Leonard. And Herman Leonard just died a year and a half ago, right? About that. And he was the world's most significant jazz photographer. And he did a lot of other things. But his photos, typically, if you see of any of the jazz greats, anybody from Tony Bennett to Frank Sinatra, Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald, Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, Herman Leonard was the only person that took all of those photographs. One of the reasons, unfortunately, he was so lucky because he's one of the few people to really care at that time to be documenting these people who were pretty great. So, one more of the story there is, if you have a camera and you're around people that you think are doing something great, it doesn't last always. You probably should take pictures, be it your family or friends, or it could be a place that you work in. If you think some great things are going on there, document it. You never know, you might be the only person with some record. So Herman Leonard did that, and he also took pictures in a lot of places without very much light. And it became his signature kind of style, which is kind of, you can even see the picture he took of me was the same kind of way. And he developed this unique way of being able to still get the image without using flash. He was obviously a master photographer, and that's what he did. So he lived in New York City, he lived in Paris, lived in a lot of different places. He moved to New Orleans, I guess when he was in his late 60s. And he lived with us maybe about 10 years or so, until actually the hurricane happened. And he lost all of his original signed photographs. I mean, by like everybody from Tony Bennett to Frank Sinatra to Ingrid Bergman to you name it. He had all these ones that he personally printed himself in his darkroom, and he had all those folks actually signed of his. So he lost all of that work, which was really tragic. But he did save 100% of his negatives and different things like that. And it, it's really amazing for me to be able to be a part of a photo session, to even be considered to be worthy to be in a room with people like I just named. And he was a character, but he kept all of his negatives and everything, and it is very difficult to even find a photograph of his now, to even get one. They're very expensive. Sonny and I went up to Los Angeles to spend a little time with him, just because I happened to be in town. I think we had the Playboy Jazz Festival. We had the Playboy Jazz Festival in Los Angeles, and I went to visit him, beautiful house outside Los Angeles, and I found out he had leukemia at that point in time. And and it was the first time I actually saw this picture. And this was literally about 2 months before he died. And he brought out the picture, and to be honest with you, I kind of wasn't happy with the picture on the cover, because I said, why am I the only person you took a picture of and you don't show your face, But he was a good salesman, and he convinced me. He told me, well, I was so brilliant that people need to see my face and all that stuff. He's a good salesman, So I was cool with it after that point. And then he died so quickly after that. I thought it'd be a great tribute to have his photo be used on the book cover, and his family agreed to that, which is really also a second honor. So with this book that I give you guys, also has it's kind of special because you get very few coffee table books that have somebody's photo like that on the cover. And the forward's done by Soledad O'Brien, who hopefully will be one of your guests this semester. If we can figure out how to work that out between her and her CNN weekly show schedule. She was kind enough to do a great forward for me. I'm the chairman of her family foundation. So we give out money to help young people, bridging the gap between them and their opportunities. And if you open up the book, when you go through it, when you get it, you'll see a cool picture of Herman Leonard and I, the photographer. And we're hanging out at LA, and I believe you took this picture, right?
Yes.
Sonny actually wound up taking this picture. So Sonny's now a famous photographer, too. So I'm going to read a few of these, the ones that I think are kind of most provocative. And if you have any questions as I go through any of these essays, we can stop and discuss. The other way that the book is constructed, there are 14 essays. And when you get the book, you'll see there are also 14 selections on a CD that comes in. So the idea is, you read an essay, listen to music, you think about it, it's supposed to be multi-dimensional, okay? So I'll start off with the first essay in the book. It's called A Little Bit of Blues. Typically, Hollywood stereotypes jazz musicians as down-and-out men who battle inner demons and struggle to survive, sometimes both financially and physically. I have a black and white photograph taken in 1948 by Herman Leonard of the youthful, legendary Dexter Gordon. In the picture, Gordon sits with his polished saxophone resting on his knee and exhales a cloud of cigarette smoke which hovers above him. He looks as if he's under the spell of the blues. The photograph is one of the most famous snapshots capturing such a classic moment in the life of this well-recognized jazz musician. When he was older, Gordon starred in the somber film Around Midnight, the story of a down-and-out alcoholic saxophone player living in France who returns from New York City to play his music before tiny audiences. More recently, Clint Eastwood directed the movie Bird, all about the tragic life of Charlie Parker. Forrest Whitaker's performance as Bird demonstrated that jazz was not a promising profession. That stereotype persisted until Mo' Better Blues, a movie by Spike Lee, that shows the lives of jazz musicians in a different light. The very cool leading man, played by Denzel Washington, is the trumpet player, and action hero Wesley Snipes plays the saxophonist. Many fellow musicians often talk about the impact this movie had on them. It made us all believe that playing jazz was cool and, in no uncertain terms, hip. The theme song is equally as cool and hip, and always reminds me of the time I realized I'd play jazz forever. I often end my shows all over the world with Mo' Better Blues. People always ask the song's name, why it's so significant to me, and why I perform it so often. To me, it's more than a song. it's my anthem. Any questions about that? Should I keep it?
What was the name of the movie with Denzel?
More Better Blues. Yeah, it's actually the name of a song that Spike Lee's dad wrote, and also the name of the movie.
Can you tell us more about that song?
Well, you know, when you gotta have to listen to it. It sounds like a song that you've heard before. It's really well written, and sometimes somebody can just look up on something that has a familiar sound to it. But you just have to recognize that at the point in time that I was figuring out what I wanted to do, you know, just like now, if somebody told you that they wanted to, you know, say, hey, what do you want to do for a profession? Somebody said, well, I want to be a musician. You know, it's like, to a lot of people, somebody saying they want to be president of the United States when they're 5, right? So at that point in time that I was in school and I was deciding that that's what I wanted to do, the types of responses I would get from people would be like, okay, but yeah, but what do you want to do for a living? Like, no, I want to be a musician. Like, no, but yeah, what are you going to make money doing? You know, so seeing that movie was the first time I even saw, you know, Denzel Washington with a trumpet player, for Christ's sake. So, you know, just that was the first time I seen an image or something like that. And the song itself is a really, it's a catchy song, but it's also the theme song from the movie. And most of the guys in my generation who are musicians, jazz musicians, who've seen the movie, quote lines from the movie. And there's a bunch of classic things that happen. For instance, there's a saxophone player. Well, first you'll learn that certain personalities, not always, but most of the time, gravitate towards certain instruments. So there's a saxophone player in the movie, and he's got a tremendous ego, but he feels like he's really the star, but he's not the leader, but he wants to be the leader, so there's a lot of tension around that. The bass players kind of like get along for everybody just to get along.